I want to take a chance to get us started because I don't want to waste any time, anything like that. I'll continue to add people as we go. Today is, in particular, really important, a really great one for me because I have known Alani for quite some time now, but been fortunate enough to work with her a little bit more uh, over the last year. So for those of you who have kind of been here for Ed Hour for some extended time, Alani actually did a presentation, I want to say almost a year and a half, 2 years ago now.
Hmm.
Um, Introducing all of us to her canine, her electronic canine dog, Lulu, who is on your presentation. And I'll let Alani talk about that, how she wants to introduce Lulu. But we started with a dog presentation. We were like, come do this. And we've been connected ever since then. So I am going to give a little more additional information. So as I continue to add people, I do want to take a second to tell you guys. So 3 years ago, well, about 3 years and 5 months ago, I got to sit in a hotel room in Missoula for the first educational power hour that I got to host, which was an opportunity to carry on the work that DOC had started, carry on the work that my mother had started, and get to do that kind of stuff. So while I tell you that, I want to share with you that this will be my last educational power hour with Board of Crime Control. And 2 weeks from now, Jackie Hoover, one of the victims program grant managers, will host the last educational power hour. For now, MBCC is going through some significant transitions. Many of you know this, and they see the value in having these opportunities to connect, but need to take some time to determine capacity and what that looks like moving forward. So, what I want to say is to consider it a hiatus for now, with hopes that it'll come back in the future. Um, so my last day with Montana Board of Crime Control is Thursday, September 18th. And then I will be moving over to the Department of Corrections, which is funny because I started under them and now I'm going back. But I'm taking a step out of victim services for the time being. So wanted to take a chance to share that. Um, And that's, I mean, Jamie, you can't say things like that. It's not fair. You have to love me. It's a requirement of your life. Um, you are required to like me. But I wanted to take a chance to share that with you guys. But I also wanted to take a chance to really give an introduction into Alani that's different than what she sent. So she sent in, we came up with a bio. It went out with the email blast yesterday, that kind of stuff. Normally I use that bio to introduce stuff, but I'm not going to do that today because I have a special connection with Alani, and have been fortunate enough to work with her for some time, not just professionally, but also in my personal life. So for those of you who have been on Ed Hour and watched me, it kind of really struggle with what the next steps were going to be like in some of this and what those things would look like. A lot of what came up was that self-doubt about where I belonged in this world and in everything. And I was fortunate because I had an Alani. And so we had our Alani and Tawny time because I love it when things rhyme and it makes me very happy. But I had someone who really works hard on building up helping professionals, particularly those involved within the justice system. And I'll let her introduce her background so she can give you an idea of what that looks like. But I had a person who was like, hey, let's talk about what it feels like to show up as yourself. What does it feel like? Who do you want to identify with? And where do you want to be? And what does that look like? So, over the last 10 months now, in particular, I've met with her once or twice monthly and had an opportunity to really work on what I needed out of the work that I do and the impact I wanted to have and what that was going to feel like. So I could tell you about her 20 years and the amazing work she's done. So on that note, just a huge congrats out to Alani. We're in the same boat right now. She just put in her retirement for um, 20 years in the military. And so she's getting a lot of the same emails I'm getting. So we have a similar understanding there, and it's been great. And I'll let her tell you about that. But on the personal level, there was a there was a time there. I'm not going to cry today, okay? There was a time there where I was pretty sure I lost my sparkle, and I was fortunate to have people in my life who reminded me it was still there, just a little bit dim, just needed a moment to rest. Um, so that's my good introduction to Alani. I'll let her tell you about her professional life. But from a personal level, these last 10 months have been very impactful for me, and I've been very lucky. So thank you. I'm going to hand it over to you now.
Okay. Oh my goodness, what an intro. Probably the kindest intro I've ever received. It has been an honor to walk alongside with you, Tani, and to reflect back what everybody else sees. And I'm proud of you for taking time to rest and ask for what you need and truly start to understand the true value that we all see in you. And we know you're not gone. You're going to be around, right? But thank you for that also because it is such a perfect segue into what we're going to be talking about today because this is all about you guys. And what Tawny just described is the common struggle of almost everybody, unless you're a psychopath, in this space that you guys are in. And so I'm here today to share some of the kind of strategic implications of what you're experiencing, as well as some tools that hopefully will encourage you as they've encouraged Tani on her journey of understanding the power that you guys each bring to the spaces that you're in, but also how to fill your cup so that we don't get to the point of losing our spark. I know I certainly have been there. Let me get my presentation going. So this was me 15 years ago. I am a career special agent, so I have almost 22 years in the Air Force. I'm a lieutenant colonel. I am a supervisory special agent. I'm actually on active duty right now. I am helping the Air Force reshape how we find terrorists and spies as we pivot away from the global war on terror to the Great Power Competition, which is our war against China. And the reality is that my expertise actually is in child exploitation. So the Air Force is like NCIS. It's called OSI, my agency, but we have jurisdiction over all the three-letter functions across the Air Force. So we're the FBI, the CIA, the Secret Service. And so I'm known as an ICAC specialist. So if you guys are familiar with the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, I've been working in that for almost the full 20 years. I have worked child exploitation and child trafficking cases on every continent except for Antarctica. And so my work now actually focuses on the holistic justice system experience because I see the same themes. It doesn't matter what jurisdiction I'm in. To work in this field is actual suffering. But the reality is that you don't have to suffer in silence. And actually, I can show you some things to help convert some of that suffering into joy and also help you set and enforce better boundaries around your energy levels so that we can keep you in the fight a little bit longer, so that you can learn how to rest when is appropriate. I myself have burned out several times, so this is 22 years of personal experience and lots of lessons learned. I've also led thousands of folks at this point, so I do a lot of national and international training. I'm going to Costa Rica in a couple of weeks to teach the Costa Ricans about all of this stuff. And really, the reality is, in order to keep the justice system functioning the way that it should be, it has very little to do with tactics or techniques or procedures, and it has more to do with the mindset and the wellness of you guys who are bringing the justice and the healing to the community. So first and foremost, I want to thank each of you for the incredible work that you do. I know so often it can feel like people don't see you and that your work is not as valued as you think. First, I will say I apologize on behalf of the system. We all know that the system is stretched out. Very much so. But that doesn't mean that you guys don't deserve the recognition that you righteously should be getting. And so I want you to know that I see you. that you matter. And to Tawny's point, one of the tools that we're going to be talking about is how you can identify people that want to support you as much as you support them. So finding that network that is going to encourage you and speak life into you when things get really hard. We're going to talk about some of the neuroscience around what's happening. But this person in this picture was absolutely terrified, worried she didn't know what she was doing. And as a result, I'm super thankful that 20 years later, I can tell that 22-year-old version of myself that you did way more amazing things. You helped so many more people than you could have imagined. I know many of you can experience that today, and if you haven't, I know that you will. So I'm a pretty informal briefer. If you guys have any questions, I want you to walk away with what you need. So I'd love for you to start thinking about what is the one thing that I would love to walk away with today that will help make me feel more energized, more inspired, or feel like I'm a little bit more empowered to move forward today because the work is really, really hard, but it is worth it. So, strategically, some of the things that I've seen. So these are the bigger themes that I've observed over the years, right? And we talked a little bit about some of these already. So lack of appreciation. Sometimes you feel like you have lack of influence, lack of satisfaction, right? So many of you work your fingers to the bone doing this work, and over time it can get really frustrating. You feel like things aren't making progress the way that you want. When injustice actually happens, right? So if you lose a case or if a victim goes back to the perpetrator or whatever outcome that's undesirable that happens, it can really degrade our morale. The number or the top three things that I have seen though over time that contribute the most to justice system burnout is number one, inability to rest, number two, burnout, and number three, self-doubt, also known as imposter syndrome. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. But these three are so insidious in what we do, and it's all born from a really beautiful place. Each of you are here because you have a passion for justice, you have a passion for people, and you have a passion for your communities. And I know I definitely, when I was younger, got in the habit of thinking, if I rest, then children continue to be exploited. I have to keep working because nobody else is here to do the work. It's just me. Well, the downside to that was that several times it caused me to burn out to the point where I was completely out of the fight. And what that actually means strategically is that the children aren't getting any protection. So society often tries to tell us that resting and self-care are bad. They're selfish endeavors, and that's not actually true. The reality is that when we can shift our perspective a little bit and learn how to self-care, and I know this is a big buzzword, I'm not trying to use it as a buzzword, but the reality is that all we're talking about is you guys are people who are of service. It's all about everybody except for you, but you can't pour from a cup that doesn't have anything in it. So we're going to talk about some tools that you can use to refill that cup so that you can stay in the fight, so that you can give yourself permission to rest, so that you can learn to accept the grace and the kudos and the love that people want to give to you so that you can stay energized. And so we can prevent things like burnout. Working in terrorism, espionage, human trafficking, child exploitation, all of those spaces, I see again the same themes of in child exploitation, I can reasonably expect that if I can keep an investigator or a victim services advocate or a prosecutor on a team for 2 years, it's a tiny miracle. And a lot of people don't understand the realities of working in our field. And as a result, what that means is the majority of the people working these very egregious cases are burning out at such a high rate that we constantly have new folks coming in, which means we have less expertise. And so, again, my intent today is to keep you guys inspired and energized so that we can keep some of that expertise in place to educate these new, very energetic folks who are coming in. So the key thing I want you guys to remember in terms of understanding how your brain is working is known as the cognitive triangle. This is basic psychology theory. It says that our thoughts generate emotions in our body, which generate behaviors. So for me, and one other thing I'll mention is we all have our little toxic trait that we use to lean on when things get really, really hard. I know for a while it was alcohol for me. I came to have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. Because I was trying to cope with, it wasn't even honestly the perpetrators or the traffickers, it was dealing with the justice system and all of its issues that led me to want to have a glass of wine at the end of the night or a beer and then a second and then a third. And I had to come to a place where I had to let that go. I also started to learn how to love my food a little bit too much, again, as a coping mechanism. And I say that because everybody has their thing. It might be shopping a little too much at Target or Amazon. It might be food related. It might be something else. But the reality is that the environment you're in does cultivate a lot of what happens in your mind. And your body is doing the very best that it can to survive this experience. So, first and foremost, I want you guys to be very, very gentle with your bodies. These undesirable behaviors that we're experiencing are because of a thought that we're having. So, usually, when we feel powerless, we are going to do something to regain control. Um, there are probably people here who love to clean their entire house when they're really frustrated, right? Because cleaning gives you a sense of control and you feel better when you do that. So there's lots of different behaviors we can exhibit, but this is also about identifying the best process and techniques that work for you to get that brain working in your favor so that the behaviors are desired and not actually hurting your body, right? So the alcohol and the food for me created a lot of havoc in my body. I have PTSD, anxiety disorder, depression, all the things, you guys. If you could talk to my therapist, man, the night terrors, I totally get it. As a side note, if anybody ever has any questions or wants to talk about anything, I'm available. I have my contact information at the end. I'm on LinkedIn and all the socials. You're more than welcome to reach out. The point is, if there's something in your head saying you're the only one experiencing it, I guarantee that you're not. And the more you understand the tool of reaching out and asking for help, just in first understanding what you're experiencing, that is the beginning of all the change that you want. I'm also an investigator and I've done tons of background checks on the counterintelligence side. Everybody has skeletons in their closet. There is nobody that hasn't done stuff that they aren't ashamed of. So I promise I've heard and seen it all. There is no part of me that's ever going to judge you. All of your story matters. So going back to this cognitive triangle, this is a tool that I like to use. So if you are familiar with like the Myers-Briggs personality test or the Enneagram or the DISC leadership assessment, these are all things that measure different qualities, whether it's leadership potential or your personality type or whatever it might be. This tool is called the Energy Leadership Index. It actually measures your emotional output. And it's just a tool. It's not perfect, right? But it's a powerful tool in helping us understand what's subconsciously happening in our brains that is dictating the behaviors that we don't want to happen. So this assessment distilled all of the emotions into 7. So we have apathy, which is also known as victim mode, anger, forgiveness, compassion, peace, joy, and passion. And I'm going to do a very brief overview of those. And as you can see at the top here of the self-perception chart, you have core thought leads to a core emotion, which is the action or result. So there's that cognitive triangle again. And so why this tool is particularly helpful for you guys is if you're able to identify the unwanted behavior, you can then start to work backwards and ask yourself, what is the thought that is leading to this behavior that I don't want? As soon as you uncover what that subconscious thought is, you can replace it with a more life-giving thought, which is going to generate a different emotion in your body and therefore a different behavior. So as an example for me, when I was in victim mode at the very bottom, right, I would, oh my gosh, I have so many examples. Let's see. When I was working child exploitation cases, oh yeah, my favorite was always dealing with leadership teams that didn't want us to work operations for one reason or another, even though they were sanctioned. It was usually some fear-driven behavior that they had. And so I would go home and I would drink my wine to de-stress or eat my food or whatever it was. And I didn't like it because not only was I gaining weight, but I just didn't feel good in my body. And so in order to shift the behavior, I had to shift the perspective. I instead wanted to feel peace, which you can see peace is this light blue circle here with the 5. And the core thought around peace is we all win or we don't play. And so the idea of I had to create the win for me was truly letting go of the outcome so that I could invite more peace into my life And while younger me didn't like letting go of that control, it was necessary to the bigger picture of my wellness, the wellness of my teams, the wellness of the cases, and our ability to best support folks that we were serving. And so this is just a more clear breakdown of each of the emotional outputs. So I'm going to start at the bottom, that victim mode. So victim mode says, I never win. Other examples of this include when I would go to the legislature to try to close loopholes in laws to provide law enforcement and prosecutors with the best tools to prosecute bad guys. And there was no political appetite for those laws to be changed. That was really frustrating. Constantly going up against the same people who were like, no, they have the power to change things for the better, but they don't want to. It's very, very frustrating. So when our body is tired of feeling victim-y, we go to anger. And the core thought around anger is I win and you lose, right? This is where control lives. And apathy and anger are actually very powerful emotions, but I want you to also keep in mind that they're not bad purely. They're only bad in extended periods of time. We need victim mode when we're tired to give ourselves permission to rest. We need anger to create justice. Anger is actually where justice exists. It's a very black and white, right? So when I go to court to testify on a case, my mindset is always, I'm going to win this case and you're going to lose, bad guy, because I have a really great case against you. And I want to make sure that you were held accountable for what you did, right? So anger is the emotion of justice. But if you sit in anger for too long, you get burned out. What's happening in the body is the brain is dumping cortisol, that adrenaline, and it's helpful if you want to escape danger, but over time it actually atrophies your muscles, the joints, the bones. So we only want to live here short term. So when your body gets tired of anger, right? You're fed up with just being angry and tense all the time. Your body will naturally want to move up to forgiveness. And the core thought here is I win and hopefully you can win too. Forgiveness is actually the emotion of it's fine. And I know many of you have experienced this, right? When somebody says, hey, Susie, what's wrong? And Susie says, it's fine. Is it really fine, you guys? No, it's not. So forgiveness it feels better than apathy and anger, but it's really not happy. It's tolerating bad behaviors. This is the emotion where we push all of the feelings that we have down in order to create a pseudo win for everybody. But really, the reality is that nobody's winning. Oftentimes in the justice system, we see this with people who want to keep the peace. So they get frustrated because they want to create some change, but they don't want to rock the boat, right? Because maybe society says you're not allowed to, especially as, a woman. And so you keep your mouth shut, but over time you get really frustrated, right? So one level up from this, we have compassion energy. This is where the majority of you love to live. Compassion energy says you win and I lose. It's all about the other person. And while this is a really powerful emotion, the downside is that you end up depleted, resentful, and burned out if you're not filling your own cup. And this is one of the biggest problems I see in the justice system is organizations will say things like, oh, if we're a family, we care about you, take the time off, take care of yourself, but they don't really mean it, right? And so it really is up to us to identify what our needs are and how to ask for them. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in depth here in a second. One level up from this is peace emotion. It says we all win or we don't play. What is really magical about peace is that when you guys, the justice seekers, first experience a situation where somebody wants you to win as badly as you want them to win, your whole world breaks wide open. You're never going to want to go back to pure compassion energy because now you start to understand that there are other people who love you just as much as you love them, and they want to mutually support your mission as much as you support them. The hard part is because we are trained not to ask for what we need, we often don't know what those needs are or how to ask for them. Oh, thank you, Susie. I can't quite see the chat, but if anybody has any questions, please just let me know. Next up from that, we have joy, which is the core thought is we always win. And this is a particularly powerful emotion in your guys' space because the core thought around joy is even when things are going bad, I know that bigger picture, this is going to work out somehow. And I know everybody on this call has many stories of times, like very hard things that they went through, where it sucked in the moment. But months or years down the road, you could look back and see, oh my gosh, that thing that was terrible, it actually worked out a lot better than what I could have imagined. What was short-term catastrophe was actually working out in my favor long term. So for justice seekers, this is the primary mindset that I know you guys naturally operate at. However, remember that the justice system operates in anger. So your number one problem is that you guys are visionaries who understand what the justice system should be doing, and you're interacting with, I'll call a spade, some egocentric, narcissistic people who don't have the community's best interests at heart. And that's bringing your energy level down, right? That's why you have to engage in forgiveness and compassion because you're trying to do your best. But the reality is, you guys have skills and tools and values and powerful solutions that you know can help your communities. It's just a matter of finding the right opportunities to implement them. And then last but not least, we have passion. So the core thought around passion is winning and losing are illusions. And so the example I'm gonna use for this is actually money. So money is paper with ink on it. That's it. But we ascribe value to this. So this is a $20 note. But it's really no different than what's in this notebook that I have. But they're worth different amounts, right? So the reality is that a lot of what we create is an illusion that man just decided to put parameters around. The beauty of that is that that means you can deconstruct whatever construct you want and choose a different way. An example of this is when I was working child exploitation cases in the Pacific. We created operations that hadn't previously been done before. Because to me, I knew I was going to win no matter what. So if I knew I was going to win, what would I create? And we were able to create these very collaborative spaces that yielded amazing results. I facilitated the arrest of at least 1,000 perpetrators over the last 5 years. And I have a 96% conviction rate in court. And that isn't because I'm particularly amazing. I'm actually terrible with cyber stuff. I hate technology, but I'm really good. My gift is bringing people together and giving them safe spaces to offer their best gifts to the mission and experiment so they can thrive. And so in that way, I created my own winning solution. It wasn't easy. There were a whole lot of people trying to fight it, trying to make it not happen. But when you start to believe that you're always winning, what would you create, right? And I'm sure for a lot of you, you can already feel in your body, it's a different emotion, right, than what you normally sit in the justice system. So if you guys are curious or want to explore what that might look like, put in the chat or send me a private message about what would you create if you knew for sure that you were going to win. Why this is a powerful exercise is because the brain is primed. There's this part of the brain called the reticular activating system. As soon as something comes out of your brain and you put it in 2D or put it on a vision board, write it in a journal, your brain is going to start working to find the opportunities to make that happen. It actually can't tell the difference between what's real and what isn't real. An example of that to drive the point home is I do a lot of undercover chat operations, right? So I'm online pretending to be a kid, and I had loads of night terrors and PTSD as a result. And even with all of my mental health training, my therapist at one point said, oh, it's because your brain can't tell the difference between what's real and what isn't. So even though you know you're pretending to be a 12-year-old online, your brain is actually experiencing the trauma as if you were the child. And that was leading to a lot of my trauma. That goes to illustrate the power of the brain. So if you can use these tools that we're going to continue to talk about to shift your neuro kind of makeup, you're going to be able to create completely different behavioral outcomes within yourself and within your community. So this is what I was talking about earlier in terms of energetic profile. Everybody has an energetic profile when they're under no stress and then when they're under stress. And I just want you to be aware of what the science shows for your group type. This is actually a report that I got from another justice seeker, and this is very typical of what I see amongst you guys. which is, again, that primary, that compassion energy when you're under no stress is your favorite way to lead. But also, you have very high levels of peace, joy, and passion energy. And then the second chart on the bottom under stress indicates that when you're in a short term period of stress, you like victim and anger mode, which is a very common human experience, right? When your boss tells you again that you can't do that thing that you know is going to help the field, you feel very victim-y. You feel like you've done everything in your power to do the right thing. And then you get mad at your boss, right? So there's that victim anger and interplay. And this isn't bad. This just indicates to us that justice is very, very important to you. And everybody experiences this. So these are not experiences we want you to purely run away from. We actually want to get you in a space where you're starting to love and appreciate your body for doing what it's designed to do, which is get mad when injustice happens, right? That points us to what your core values are as a human being. So, going back to fear mode, actually, this is the part where we talk about imposter syndrome, which is actually experienced by 70+% of the people in this room. So, imposter syndrome is defined as a psychological condition which is characterized by persistent doubt concerning your own abilities. So you feel like you're not worthy or you're an imposter in the field that you're in. So if you've had thoughts of like, I don't know what I'm doing, or people are going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing, and then when you're exposed as the imposter, that bad things are going to happen. You might lose respect, esteem, you might lose your position, you might lose your job. All kinds of horrific things happen. This term in and of itself was actually coined by doctors Clance and Immis back in the 60s. These women ran a study where they discovered that there were these very high performing women in their university who were constantly deflecting accolades or positive feedback. So if somebody says to you, hey, you did a great job on that project, and you think things like, oh no, it wasn't anything, or oh, it was a team effort, knowing good dang well that you were the primary driver of that, you're probably experiencing some imposter syndrome. And so the first study these women did disclosed that 70% of the participants experienced this imposter phenomenon. And more than 60 studies have been done since the 60s around this event. And that same number comes up whether female or male. It's 70% of the population experiences this fear. So when I first heard about imposter syndrome, I was in a military unit getting a briefing like this. And I just remember looking around being like, 70% of you guys are experiencing this and we're not talking about it. Like the fear that drove me every day, feeling that I wasn't good enough and I wasn't qualified for the work I was doing, absolutely drove my behaviors of perfectionism, which led to my own burnout and all of those things. So my goal here is to prevent that in you, because you guys have so much inherent value and we need you to stay in the fight and offer the gifts up. So other behaviors, we talked about the perfectionism, dismissing positive feedback. Anybody can do what I did. If you've ever said that, you probably have imposter phenomenon. Imposter syndrome even impacts your money. So when you are negotiating an initial contract for a job, if you struggle to ask for your worth, or at the point of a raise, if you struggle to ask your boss for your worth in terms of a pay bump, that probably indicates that you have imposter syndrome. You over prepare, you overwork, first one in, last one out. These are all things I used to tell myself too. And the result again was self-sabotage, burnout, frustration, resentment. And it was all of my own creation. So, tool time. What I want you to know first and foremost is that if you resonate with this imposter phenomenon concept, there's hope for you. People experience imposter phenomenon when they're doing something that is aligned with their greatest gifts. And what's happening is your brain is saying, what if you fail at your life purpose? Then what are you going to do? So you may as well not try, because here are all these reasons why you're not good enough and you're not qualified. So your biology is perfect and it's doing everything it can to keep you safe. The body was created and it operates in survival mode. But what I'm offering you guys is to shift that from surviving to thriving mode. And the reality is that what you think is your weakness is the key to unlocking your greatest power. Now, when I was in my imposter syndrome, the deepest of it, the 4 attributes my imposter told me I lacked, or my identity that wasn't good, was I'm too small, too female, too brown, and too young looking. The reality is you wouldn't look at me and think, oh, Alani works with special operations. Oh, Alani leads international human trafficking efforts. Because society has told you that this is not what that looks like. I thought it was an impediment for a long time. But what I learned was my physical appearance gave me the superpower of being able to go into parts of Iraq that were teeming with terrorists, and I could hide in plain sight because nobody suspected I was in the military. I was a senior Pentagon bodyguard. I had a team of bodyguards that worked for me, and I was the lead for one of the top Pentagon officials for 2 years. I initially felt super impostery until I realized I had the element of surprise working in my favor because nobody suspected I was the bodyguard. But guess what? My trigger finger works the same as anybody else's. Okay? So, all that to say, step one to getting your imposter to work for you is identifying what your core message is. The two top messages I've seen over the last 10 years of doing this work is I'm not smart enough and I'm not educated enough. So if that thought in your brain has told you things like, you can't do that, you don't have the credentials, or you can't do that, you're actually not smart enough. Again, indicators of imposter syndrome, and there's indicators that there's magic happening under the surface that we need to bring to the top in order for you to shift from survival mode to thriving. Again, mine were I'm too female, I'm too young, I'm too quiet is another big one. Introverts, society says that it's all about the extrovert, but that's not true. Introverts have magical superpowers, and oh my gosh, have I seen them unleash and make magic happen without saying hardly a word, okay? I love to share examples of really high-powered people who have significant kind of detrimental behavior. So as an example, dyslexia. There was a study done where it was determined that there was a very high preponderance of Fortune 500 CEOs that had dyslexia. And when they peeled the layers back, what they discovered was the dyslexic person as a child was frustrated in having to learn how to read in a different way than their peers. But that forced resiliency and learning in childhood gave them the framework to be most successful in business. So if you've ever felt guilt or shame around your dyslexia, how does it feel to know that you're in the running to be a Fortune 500 CEO? It's not a detriment now, right? So if you have already identified through hearing me talk what you think your key weakness is, but you're not sure how to parlay that into your superpower, shoot me a note. I'm happy to walk you through it because you guys 100% deserve it. All right. So once you've identified what your I am statement is, so I'm not smart enough, I don't have the credentials, I'm too small, I'm too young, whatever nonsense it might be. Step two is, and I know this sounds ridiculous, but I want you guys to just like humor me for a second. I want you to name your imposter and identify the origin story because this voice came from somewhere. It's not part of you, it's something that you created to keep you safe. So my imposter is actually the mayor of Whoville. From the movie, if you guys remember the Jim Carrey, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, um, there's a scene where the town of Whoville figures out that Christmas has been stolen, and the mayor tells Cindy Lou Who in front of everybody, this is what we get for listening to a little good-for-nothing girl. And when I first saw that scene 30 years ago, or whenever it came out, my heart, like, there was a pinch because I didn't realize that that's the same thing my imposter has been telling me. Even though you guys who've watched the movie know that Cindy Lou was right about Christmas. Christmas was not about things. Christmas was about connection and community and family. But here was this person in a position of authority telling this young girl that she was wrong. So the power of naming your imposter is actually that now you're separating it from you. Now you can interact with that voice differently because it's not actually you. Some other examples of past client stories. So we've got Marlena Grew. She's the hypercritical mother of Gru from Despicable Me. I had a client use her as the avatar for her imposter. I had a client with 3 imposter statements, and they had to do with her physical appearance. So she named them Chloe, Kim, and Courtney after the Kardashian sisters. You cannot name your imposter after your mother-in-law. So sorry. That's not okay. Do not use the names of real people whom you know. Okay? Not your boss, nobody. But the point is that this is a fun, more comical way of engaging with your inner imposter. And now we can start to talk to it a little bit differently and engage with it differently. Um, so one of the tools that you can use once you've identified a different uh, avatar for it is when it comes up, you can tell it, hey, I appreciate that you're here to help me. I know that my brain is doing this to protect me from being hurt, but this is really important and your services are not needed here. That actually works with about 40% of folks. So that also demonstrates the power of creating a different persona for that thought because it's not you. You can tell it to go away and a good chunk of the time it's going to actually listen to you. Another way to support unleashing your greatest gifts is to know what your greatest gifts are. Most people have never done a values assessment. I have a QR code here that you can use, or you can email me and I'll be happy to send you a copy. But I remember the first time I was told, hey, let's do a values assessment. And I was like, I know what my values are. And when my instructor asked me what they were, the reality was I didn't know. I realized I had been given a set of values, but I had never done the work to explore who was I. And so ultimately, this values assessment, it'll take you 20 minutes to do. It's really simple. It helps you identify what your most important values are and how well you live them out. And then if there's a really big disparity between the two, if you start to prioritize those values, you will start to feel more aligned with who you're supposed to be. So for me, excellence, connection, kindness is my superpower. I get really pissed off when I hold a door open for somebody and they don't say thank you. Super petty, I know, but that's something that I've realized about myself. And actually, that's a way to identify what your core values are. What pisses you off about the world? What things do people do that drive you nuts? If you hate grammatical mistakes or misspellings, maybe excellence is one of your top values, right? And that is your gift. But the reality is that we all have strengths and weaknesses. And if we leverage everybody's strengths to cover everybody's weaknesses, the result is the justice system is able to get more done with better outcomes more efficiently. And I don't know about you, but I like doing less work for better results. Step 4 is interrogating your inner imposter. So ultimately, with this step, again, we're learning how to interact with our imposter. And the reality is that oftentimes that imposter is a value of ours that has gone awry. So it's a value that we've stuffed down for too long. And that value is trying to get your attention. And over time, it actually morphs into this really loud, raucous thing. And so having a conversation with it, as silly as it sounds, is a really powerful tool that you can use to, again, become better aligned with who you were always meant to be and thrive better in your workspaces. And so you guys know I'm an investigator by trade. I'm a special agent. We have all the investigative tools. I'm a human intelligence officer. I know how to do interrogations. And there's one tool we like to use. It's really simple but very powerful, and it's the 2 chairs technique. So you're going to imagine that there are 2 chairs facing each other. Your imposter, which you've given it an alternate ego, is sitting in one chair and you're sitting in the other chair. And you're going to ask it one of 2 questions. Why are you here? And what is it you've been trying to teach me that I haven't paid attention to? And this is what we call a choice question in the interviewing space. And psychologists tell us when you ask this choice question, the first person who speaks loses. So as an investigator, when I ask my choice question, did you kill that person because you're a horrible murderer, or did you kill them because you were trying to protect life? Whoever speaks first loses. And so we're going to sit in silence and take advantage of it. 100% of the time, when people use this technique, their inner imposter reveals things about who they really are that will blow them away. So again, if this isn't your thing, if this feels too woo, totally cool. Talk to your therapist, no worries whatsoever. But if this sounds like something that might help open the door for a realignment of who you were always supposed to be so you can thrive better in your workspace, I highly encourage it. It is such a powerful tool. And then last but not least, we're going to harness our imposter. So I had mentioned this slide's actually old. Operation Keiki Shield. So Keiki in Hawaiian means child. So Operation Child Shield was one of the operations that I led for some years. And even though we were very successful, people would ask me, Alani, like, how did you create this? Were you so successful in bringing 17 law enforcement agencies, victim services, aftercare, like medical, everybody together to actually play nicely? There was a whole lot of drama involved, as I know you guys have experienced yourselves. But the reality was that for 3 days before every op, I wanted to throw up. I wanted to run away. I was absolutely terrified. My imposter was very loud. Who do you think you are? You're a nobody. You don't matter. You're just the small female that nobody takes seriously, right? And the reality is, again, that once you understand your imposter only comes up when you're aligned with your life purpose, now you can start to interact with it differently. So when I experience my imposter now, I get excited because it means there's some magic right around the corner. And in order to do that, we have to engage in our spirituality. So, this is a tool that I have used over the years. So, pre op, when we do our safety briefing, I always talk about this. It's an email that we got after our first op got publicized in one of the other jurisdictions I was working. And basically, our missing kids office got an email from a lady who said, "Hey, I was recovered in one of those stings. I was being trafficked between the ages of 13 and 18. Some undercover guy came and found me. I knew he was an undercover. I didn't say anything to him at the time. It's been 10 years. But can you please find Officer Smith and let him know that I'm doing well, that I'm clean, I met a nice guy, I'm a mom," right? We tried our best to find that officer, but couldn't. He had a very common last name, and that jurisdiction still uses carbon paper, if that tells you anything. But ultimately, this is what I use to encourage people on the operations to say, the work you're doing now has reverberations bigger than what you will experience. So imagine that the work you're doing today is actually creating impact that you might never see, right? But you have to know it's true. This is a spiritual practice. I define spirituality as something you know to be true, but have no physical proof is actually existing. So those of you who are here know that you've saved lives, you've helped victims, you've created breaks in generational chains that you're never going to fully understand. But in your heart of hearts, you have to know that that's true. This is a spiritual practice. So, in order to harness our imposter, we need to use more of that energy. And so, one of the ways we do that is through connection, right? These are my personal heroes. These are people, intel analysts, victim services, aftercare providers, psychiatrists, detectives that I worked with who very humbly just showed up and did amazing work in whatever capacity they could. They didn't do anything particularly superhuman other than say, "This is all I can offer. I love this mission. I love these people. I want to see something different." And then they let go of the outcome. And one of the things we were able to do was band together to support each other when we each had our ugly snot bubble moments, which we all have, right? In frustration when dealing with the system. And I have had those moments. I still have those moments. I wanted to cut somebody yesterday on the Air Force side, but I understand that I have tools now that I can lean on. The reality is, every jurisdiction I've been in that made magic on the justice side, it was actually less than 5 people that got together and said, "Let's band together. What's your gift? What's your gift? Let's combine those forces." And when you see the massive results, it wasn't the 100 other people that participated. It was this core tiny group of folks. And these are some of them that you see on the screen today. Okay, I wanted to leave a little bit of time for Q&A. It is always an honor to be with my fellow justice system brothers and sisters. I love you guys. I'm so, so thankful for the important work that you do. I hope this was helpful for you. But if anybody has any questions, the floor is yours, really. You can ask me anything. There's nothing that's off limits. But I want you to walk away with what you need. So how can I best support you guys today?
So I'm gonna take a quick moment. I got a message of some people have had to leave. That happens with court hearings and stuff. But one of the things that came was this topic. Someone said this is a topic I've needed more than anything. And that's in capital letters with needed. And I'm dying to hear, but have to run to the hospital to meet with a victim. So gonna throw that part out. I need this, and I know that. So as people come together and have questions, that kind of stuff, again, creating that opportunity, unmute, raise your hand, join the conversation. I wanted to take a chance because you and I talk about this a lot, is that spirituality piece. And Jamie knows this. It's something that I push back on, and I pushed back on you a lot when we were talking about what that looked like and what it meant to identify that. So, one of the things that I think was really important to me as we had that conversation was that spirituality was something outside of just this concept of religion that we have oftentimes been raised to believe is that. Um, it's so much more. It's having that faith in the universe, that knowing that something is coming. And Alani and I talk about this a lot because there's been so many things that have pushed me into different areas and into different things. I've told you guys a million times, victim services was never the intention. It was never what I thought I'd do. I'd seen what that world looked like. It's the world that I feel the most connected to. So, and I know that now and I feel that, but I got pushed there. And I think about that when I think about when we talk about spirituality. I also think about the survivors we work with. And this is a conversation. Again, I'm fortunate that I don't just have this wonderful group of people I've created. I have a parent who knows this world really well, and we have the opportunity to talk. Survivors who have lost all hope, who have felt the depths of the pain of what they've gone through. Faith is one of the spirituality is one of the top identified skills in moving through and finding opportunities to thrive and heal. And it took me years of working with survivors to be comfortable enough to say that healing isn't just one linear option. We can find other options for you, even if that's not the world I live in. There are other service providers who have strong connections to faith groups that we can get you connected with and the importance in that. And so I think it's one of those things when we talk about spirituality that sometimes people instantly shut down. I've shut down on you. It probably took like 4 months of you bringing up spirituality and me being like, I'm not interested in that. I need science. I need facts. I need these things. Um, but then since then, having that breakdown and also recognizing, first off, it's not just about me. Other people find ways of identifying faith and spirituality and what carries them, but then finding out what that meant for me. And so I just wanted to bring that up because I think it's such a crucial part of when we talk about this, that it's this unknown that we try to encompass.
Totally. And I love so much that you brought that up. And I am very not hesitant, but I'm very careful with that topic because there's so much religious trauma, especially. And the reality is that, like I said, how I define spirituality is something you know to be true that you don't have evidence for. And what you beautifully highlighted is that Western society, especially, relies on intellect so much, but you guys, especially, have very strong intuitions, and that is spiritual. So it doesn't matter if you call it the universe or God or crystals. Like, I literally don't care what you want to call it, right? I work with plenty of atheists who say, my spirituality is my soul, right? The soul is something that you know exists that you don't have evidence to prove, but it exists. All you justice seekers, I know you believe in spirituality because you are literally working to creating a reality that doesn't exist. That is the definition of spirituality. So, for each of you guys who are rumbling with that, I encourage you to continue rumbling. That's the point. I had my own rumble. I was like flipping the middle finger at what I thought was God back in the day, and I left the church and all the things, right? Like, but to Tawny's point, it's about discovering for you what does your spiritual practice look like and how can you harness that to create the life and career and the solutions that your community needs. And oftentimes that is kind of the missing link to Tawny's point for a lot of folks in the justice system. We're so focused on the laws and everything's very black and white, but even on the investigation side, I'm sure you've heard on TV or people that you know where they'll be like, oh, I just had a hunch to go look over here. What do you think a hunch is, right? It's your intuition saying, hey, something's going on over here and you should go look at it. I've had those moments and it's super eerie and kind of crazy, right? But the point is that the more I've honed in on when my body is sending me those signals, the more magical the outcomes. And the reality is that when I share that with people, it gives them more permission to say, I should follow my gut too. What does that look like? Who do I resonate with already who harnesses their intuition really powerfully so that I can learn from them how to cultivate that intuition within myself? So again, I don't care what you call it, intuition, soul, Holy Spirit, God, universe, Gaia, like I don't care. But if you want to be the best at your work to support your communities, that is an important part of your development that I would just encourage you to explore. That's it. And you don't have to have it figured out. Um, One of my favorite quotes was Father Richard Rohr talks about faith is literally the opposite of knowing, right? So often in spiritual spaces, they're like, no, you have to know. Like these are the tenets and you have to believe it. But he says faith is not knowing and still choosing to believe. So for you, what are the beliefs about the justice system that you want to have as core anchors? And one of them for me to get over my burnout was I'm not the one creating the justice. There is a higher power that I believe in that is actually creating the justice. So whether I put handcuffs on that person, or let's say despite my best efforts, they go unaccounted for, that higher power is going to bring justice in a way that is going to be way worse than anything I could do to them, right? You might not agree with that belief, but that was the belief I decided to embody in order to get closer to peace and trust and know that justice always, always, always comes around. And having been in the space for almost 25 years, that's what I know to be true is whether justice comes today or in 10, 15, 20 years, it always comes. So, but yeah, I see Tim made a comment about, ooh, ROTC and Bozeman. Oh my goodness, Tim, you holler. I am an OSI agent. I'm happy to talk to your kid about whatever. I will give them all the keys to the kingdom. So yes, I'll put my email, and you guys can email me anytime. I do a lot of Air Force recruiting too. But yeah, awesome. I know we only have a couple minutes left, so I'll put it back over to Tawny. But
I did want to give a chance, Tim. I saw you turned your video on too. So if you had anything else you wanted to add, I wanted to give you a chance to do so.
No, it's incredible. It's just interesting learning a whole other part of justice that is out there. And so, thank you for your experience and all you do. And I realized, yeah, like a whole part I never even realized, but that international ability to do things is kind of incredible. Thank
oh,
you.
thank you so much, sir. And I appreciate the comment, but I also know that you have that same power in you, right? That's the point of the conversation is learning how to harness that intuitive side of us. And I've worked around enough justice seekers like you to know you guys are the most badass humans I've ever met. And it is always an honor to interact with you. So I'm in Helena. If you see Lulu and I walking around town, please say hi. I've got Lulu stickers. If you'd like some, just shoot me a note with your mailing address and I'll send them. But thank you, Tawny, for the opportunity to chat with your crew. Thank you for your many years of service to Montana Board of Crime Control. We love you very much. And thank you, thank you, thank you.